Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you bring into focus the true cost of college and how to tackle the runaway cost of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Beatrice Schultz, a certified financial planner and founder of Westface College Planning. Now, here's your host for College Smart Radio, Beatrice Schultz.
Welcome to College Smart Radio. You can't turn on the news without hearing the discussion about the 7 million undergraduates caught in the middle of a debate in Washington over whether to hold down or let the 3.4 interest rate on subsidized federal student loans double to 6.8% starting in July. On today's College Smart Radio program, we're going to discuss the real numbers for you. How much do student loans really cost? What's the impact of a 3.4% or 6.8% interest rate? What's the difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized loan? What factors should you take into consideration before signing that first promissory note? Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is all about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids. With many, in fact, traditional private schools costing over $60,000 a year, a UC costing $35,000, and a California State University running $25,000, parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and prioritizing your source of funds to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on my own education and experience, I share my insights with you week in and week out. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering and a Master's degree in International Business. I am a certified financial planner and the owner of the San Carlos-based college planning business, Westface College Planning. I host workshops and webinars on college planning and consult with parents on a daily basis. And in addition to my insights, I bring in experts in many areas of the college process, from educators, counselors, financial professionals, admissions officers, parents, and even students. You'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. In addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information at our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles that I've authored with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway cost of college. We have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning. We also have posted a glossary of key terms used in the world of college planning. Terms like subsidized loan, unsubsidized loan, EFC, total cost of attendance, FAFSA, and so forth. And we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that I host to teach parents about how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. So let's get into today's show and bring some clarity to student loans. Let's start by introducing my guest who's in the studio with me today, Mark Guthrie. Mark is my partner at Westface Financial and Insurance Services. He's a registered representative with the ON Equity Sales Company and a member of FINRA SIPC. And as a bonus, he's my husband. Mark's been a popular guest on College Smart Radio. Last fall, he joined us for our two-part program discussing where to save for college. We also have a show exclusively discussing 529 programs, the pros and the cons. Mark's also joined me for a program on buying real estate for your college student. Podcasts of each of these shows are available at the collegesmartradio.com website under the Archives tab. Hi, Mark. Welcome to College Smart Radio.
Hi, Beatrice. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining me today. Hey, Mark, in your practice and in our practice, many of our retirement planning clients are trying to figure out the best way to fund college for their kids. Can you share with me some of the questions you hear about your clients, especially related to the questions about loans?
Yeah, probably the most common question I get is in the area of student loans. Parents are trying to figure out how to use their assets, how to borrow money often, and the area that they're most unfamiliar with are these student loans. So the questions that I get are, what are the different types of student loans available?
I think it's a big question that I hear all the time, and oftentimes parents expect that even if a loan is considered a student loan, that they might have to co-sign for it. The truth is there are parent loans and private loans that do need parent co-signers, but there are definitely student loans available that only the student needs to be sign a promissory note for. And there's 3 government student loans that are available. One's called the Perkins loan, one's called the Stafford unsubsidized loan, and there's the Stafford subsidized loan. The Perkins loan is available for really the most needy of students, and it's a 5% interest rate that is subsidized, meaning the government pays for the interest while they're in college. It's a loan that has to be offered by the college. A Stafford, and then there's a Stafford unsubsidized loan and Stafford subsidized loan. Let's talk today. I think I want to focus a little bit more on the Stafford loans, and we won't talk specifically about the need-based Perkins loan.
Sounds good. So why are they called Stafford loans? Where did that name come from?
It's kind of a funny question, actually. I believe that in 1988, when Congress renamed the Federal Guaranteed Student Loan Program, they renamed it to the Robert T. Stafford Student Loan Program, which was in honor of the U.S. Senator Robert Stafford, who was a Republican from Vermont who was doing work on higher education at the time. So that's why it's called the Stafford Loan, and it's been called that since 1988.
Wow, how times have changed. The Republican was actually trying to help students in their student programs, and today it seems like they want variable rate loans versus fixed loans. Well, that's Washington for you. Specifically, how does a student qualify for a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan? What's basically the difference between those two?
I'll talk about the difference between the two, but I'm going to start by saying that in order for a student to qualify for any government aid, including any loans, the family must complete the FAFSA. So the FAFSA we've talked about on a lot of the shows. It's the free application for federal student aid, and that FAFSA is available to complete in January of your child's senior year. And you need to reapply every year in order to qualify to get any government loans. Now, the government loans, the Stafford loans, come in two flavors. The subsidized loan is actually only available for students that have some kind of financial need. And the definition of financial need, we've talked about the term cost of attendance. If the cost of attendance at a college is higher than what the family's expected family contribution is, then they have a financial need, and then they may qualify for some subsidized loans. The unsubsidized loans are available to every student who submits the FAFSA and is going to college full-time,
regardless of whether or not they have a financial need or not.
Correct. The unsubsidized loans are available even if you don't demonstrate a need, but both the unsubsidized and subsidized loans have a maximum amount that you can borrow per year.
Oh, okay. So a student can actually get a loan even if their parents have quite a bit of money, quite a bit of income. A student could still qualify for taking out a Stafford loan. They're not going to get a subsidized loan, but they could take out a Stafford loan and use that money in addition to what the family would be expected to pay.
Exactly. They'd be able to use that to pay for college. And the benefit of the Stafford loans, student loans, is that the money does not need to be paid back until 6 months after the student graduates or leaves a full-time situation at college. So unfortunately, if they leave college and they don't graduate, they still need to pay back those loans. But that can be really helpful for a family that doesn't have a lot of cash flow during those college years. They don't have to start paying it back until after graduation.
Okay. So tell me, who's the lender? Who's actually lending these students this money?
So for the Stafford loans, the lender is the U.S. Department of Education. And in fact, for subsidized loans, we haven't talked a little bit about the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans, but subsidized loans are the ones of need for need students where the government actually pays interest while the student's in school. So the student gets it interest-free. So the U.S. Department of Education, our government, is the one that is the lender of these loans.
Okay. And how much can a student borrow? What's the amount that a student can borrow from these student loan programs?
So one of the important things to understand about these student loan programs is the amount you're allowed to borrow is an annual amount. And that's often important for families to understand because they may think, I'm going to borrow all the money in the fourth year of college, but actually it's best to borrow it along the way. So the maximum available for Stafford loans is $5,500 the first year, $6,500 as a second-year student, $7,500 as a third-year student, and $7,500 as a fourth-year student. Now, that's the maximum amount for total Stafford loans. There's also a ceiling on how much is available for subsidized loans, and those numbers are lower by $2,000 each year, so it's $3,500 would be the maximum subsidized loan in your first year, for example.
Okay. So what's the difference here? I mean, what's the nature of the subsidization? I mean, are there different interest rates? Are there different terms? What makes one better than the other?
So today there are different interest rates and there are different terms. Today the Stafford subsidized loan, and this is one of the debates that's maybe changing July 1st or will automatically change July 1st unless Congress does something about it. The interest rate for a subsidized loan is 3.4%, and the other benefit is the government pays the interest while you're in college. So for a student who has subsidized loans, when they graduate, there will have been no interest that accrued along the way. The interest rate for an unsubsidized loan is 6.8%, and that's not expected to change, but it'll be 6.8%. That interest accrues along the way, and I think during the second half of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about what those numbers actually mean. But 6.8% for unsubsidized loans and 3.4% for subsidized loans.
All right, so there's basically two differences as I'm hearing it. One is the interest rate, 3.4 versus 6.8, so one's half the other. And the other is that for the subsidized loan, during the time the student is in school, there's no interest accruing. Both loans you don't have to start paying back till they get out of school, but there's no interest accruing during the time the student's in school for the subsidized loan, where the unsubsidized loan, the rate's higher, and the clock starts ticking on interest accumulating during the time the student's actually in school. Is that a fair summary?
That's a great summary. That's exactly the difference between the two.
Great. So do you want to talk a little bit about what we're hearing in the newspaper and on the radio every day about the government talking about doubling the cost of student loans? Does that have to do with this subsidized 3.4 interest rate?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk going on in Congress because the interest rate will automatically double to 6.8% from the 3.4, but only for subsidized loans. And that's a really important factor because families have been calling me saying, are my interest rates going to double? And they're thinking that 6.8% will double on an unsubsidized loan to 13%. So this specific discussion in Congress has to do with the subsidized rate for subsidized loans going from 3.4% to 6.8%.
Okay. So when we hear the doubling of interest, it's not all loans, all student loans are going to double in interest. It's only these very specific subsidized loans that have a relatively low rate of 3.4 that are going to double if Congress doesn't do something about it.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. You're with us on College Smart Radio, where my guest today is Mark Guthrie of Westface Financial, and we've been discussing student loans. Let's take a break here. We'll be right back on College Smart Radio, tackling the runaway costs of college.
For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. College Smart Radio continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. Contact Beatrice Schultz at collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Now, back to College Smart Radio with your host Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. If you've just joined us, I'm talking with Mark Guthrie, my partner at Westface Financial, about the different types of student loans. Mark, we were just talking about the debate going on today about the student loan interest rates, and let me summarize that because we went to break. Basically, unless Congress acts, the interest rates charged on subsidized Stafford loans will double from 3.4 to 6.8% on July 1st. We don't know what decision is going to be made, but it'll be made over the next couple of weeks. Really, the next couple of weeks by July 1st, if there is a choice to keep it at 3.4%. We went through this exact same situation last year in 2012, and the decision was made to leave the interest rates at 3.4%. Right now, if you listen to the news, it actually could go either way. So we're not going to predict it, but I think what would be great is to actually go through some of the numbers for our audience to really understand, well, what does it matter if it's 3.4 or 6.8, and how much is it really going to cost me to borrow money to go to college?
Sure. Well, based on what we talked about, there seems to be three scenarios that we might want to take a look at. Scenario number one is a subsidized loan at 3.4%. Scenario number two is a subsidized loan at 6.8%. And then scenario three is an unsubsidized loan at 6.8%. So based on what you were saying, the limits are for what a student could borrow. Let's just take a look at the same borrowing from a student going through a 4-year program with regards to the same dollars being borrowed, and then let's take a look at how much total interest there is, what the monthly payments will be under the three different scenarios. So the first assumption is the student would borrow $3,500 in the first year, $4,500 in the second year, and then $5,500 in years 3 and year 4.
And just to reinforce that point, that today, that's the maximum amount that's allowed to be borrowed at a subsidized loan. And for all of our listeners, the subsidized loans are available, again, for students that have a need, but also those subsidized loans have to be offered from the colleges. So, for example, a college could say, we're not going to give you any subsidized loans, we're going to give you grants instead. So for the planning purposes, you typically won't know exactly how much subsidized loans you're offered until you see a student award letter. But when you do, if you're offered the maximum subsidized loan, then this would be your best loan that you're looking at.
So these borrowing amounts would be the most under a subsidized loan offering. But if it were an unsubsidized loan, as you mentioned earlier, the amounts could be higher.
That's correct.
But the main thing that we want to look at is kind of an apples-to-apples comparison. So when we add up that $3,500, $4,500, $5,500 for years 3 and year 4, that totals $19,000. So a subsidized loan would mean that during those 4 years, the student would borrow those dollars, and their debt would be $19,000 as they leave university, because the interest is not being accrued to them during those years. The government's paying it, the government's not charging it. I'm not quite sure how that math really works, but the bottom line is the student isn't on the hook for the interest during those years. So if you had $19,000 and you were going to pay that off over 10 years, and that's the duration of these loans, then what that would mean at 3.4% would be $187 a month for 120 months. That would be the payment. So a little under $200, $187 a month. And that would mean that you would have a cumulative payments of $22,439.
Actually, that's a great point. So just so everyone understands, the government only pays the interest, or it's not charged to you while you're in college. But once you graduate, you're going to start paying 3.4% on that money while you're paying it back. And that's why, as Mark said, that accumulated amount is more than the $19,000 that you start with the day that you graduate from college.
Right. So you'll owe $19,000, but you're going to pay back more than $19,000 because you're paying over 10 years, and for every dollar you don't pay back, they're going to charge you interest on a compounding basis, 3.4%. So bottom line, you borrow $19,000, you're going to pay back about $22,500, which means you're spending about $3,500 in interest. So that's the best case scenario. That's the subsidized loan at the maximum amounts, right?
Perfect.
So let's take a look at that same math, assuming Congress doesn't act and that subsidized rate goes from 3.4 to 6.8. Same math. We're going to borrow $19,000. We're not going to have any obligation for interest during the college years, which means when we graduate, we'll owe $19,000, just like under scenario number 1. However, we now have to pay at a 6.8% interest rate, double the interest. So what does that mean? Well, that means that instead of paying back $22,500, you've got to pay back $26,000 and about $300. Or instead of owing the $19,000 plus $3,500 in interest, you're going to owe the $19,000 plus $7,200 of interest. So it is not quite double, but almost. I mean, it's, you double the interest rate and the interest is going to double, right? It doesn't take Einstein to figure that one out. So that's a big deal. And really what it means is instead of having a monthly payment of $187, your monthly payment's going to be $218 for 10 years. So it's $187 versus $218.
So we're starting to get closer to small car payment, that equivalent, and that's where the students aren't going to have a lot of money to put into the economy when they're paying back these loans. That's a great comparison. So we've just talked about the subsidized loans, the discussion in Congress, which is if it's a 3.4% loan and you borrow $19,000 during your 4 years of college, you're going to end up graduating. You will have paid $22,439, and you'll be paying $186 a month. If it's subsidized, but it's a 6.8% interest, the total amount you're going to pay is going to be over $26,000, and your monthly payment coming out with a 10-year payback plan is $218.
Yeah. So when we look at the same balances, borrowing $35, $45, $55, $5,500 each year, but we look now at scenario number 3, which is the unsubsidized loan. So this loan means that you're paying 6.8%, but you're actually accruing or being obligated to pay back interest later during the college years. So what that means is as you borrow that money, each year you will be paying, you won't be paying, but you'll be increasing your debt, in effect, by the interest owed. So in that first year of $3,500, if you just take a 6.8% interest rate against that, it's a little over $200. And then that same $3,500 in the second year is going to accrue interest, which means $3,500 plus that $230 plus another $300, because now you're paying interest on interest, and it's going to accumulate, and so on and so forth. So if you look at that $19,000 that you borrowed in a scenario 3, an unsubsidized loan, you're going to actually add about $3,400 to that $19,000 to get a total debt starting the day, well, a couple months after you graduate from college, of not $19,000, but $22,388. So that's the difference. The difference, one difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized is right off the bat, regardless of the interest rate of the subsidized loans, because it doesn't matter during the college years, with an unsubsidized loan, you're tacking on an extra $3,300 to your debt the day you walk out of school because the interest was growing during your university years.
Yeah, and one of the flexibilities about the government loans is you can start to pay it back earlier, or in the case of an unsubsidized loan, you could be paying back the interest along the way so that it doesn't accrue and that you have less of a balance when you graduate. But it's still a big number that's going to have to be paid back. And interestingly enough, you don't have to pay back your loan until 6 months after you graduate, but the interest is still accruing during that 6 months after you graduate. So the kids are like, I don't even have to start paying back yet. And my usual recommendation is, if you've got a job, start paying it back. No sense accruing another 6 months worth of interest.
Sure, makes sense. So let's just follow this through. So we now graduate. We've now got a debt of not $19,000 but $22,000. And then we're going to pay that back over 10 years. It's going to be 6.8% interest, which means that the monthly payment will be $258 a month. So what did that mean? That meant that from today's situation with an unsubsidized loan at 3.4, the monthly payment was $187. If that rate were 6.8, the monthly payment would be $218. An unsubsidized loan with that extra $3,000 tacked on means your monthly payment's now $258 a month. So what that totals to is actually an extra, in addition to the money that you're paying back, the cumulative payments would be $30,000 or total interest paid of $8,500. So the difference between a unsubsidized loan, the difference between an unsubsidized loan and either of the subsidized scenarios is pretty dramatic. It's pretty expensive. Now, obviously, everybody would want as much unsubsidized as they could get.
Subsidized
as they can get. But if you can't qualify, you can't qualify, right? So
absolutely. And I think for those of you who are listening and saying, holy smokes, how can I follow those numbers? I'm going to have a link to the Federal Student Aid website, which talks about each of these loans, and also a student loan calculator on our College Smart Radio website under the resources link and then the menu tab. Boy, that was the show's already coming to end. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on College Smart Radio.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. You can hear us each week here on 1220 AM KDOW, Saturdays at 3 p.m. We promise to bring you up-to-date information from the front lines of helping parents deal with the most expensive years of their lives. For a link to a podcast of this show and our prior weekly shows, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. In addition to the podcast, you'll also find a schedule of our upcoming shows. Plan to join us at one of our upcoming Westface College Planning workshops. You can reserve your seat at a workshop, either live or via webinar, from the show's website, collegesmartradio.com. I also have some great tips and links to articles on my Facebook page. Visit my Westface College Planning Facebook page and don't forget to like it. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio. We look forward to sharing more helpful information with you next week.
Information presented during today's show is not to be construed as advice meeting the particular needs of any investor. All mention of performance is based on historical experience. It should not be assumed that past performance is any indication of future results. Tax and or legal advice is not offered by Mark Guthrie. Please consult with your tax professional for additional guidance regarding tax-related matters. Mark Guthrie is a registered representative with the ON Equity Sales Company, member FINRA SIPC, and an independent advisor representative through the ON Investment Management Company. Mark Guthrie is also licensed to offer insurance and annuities in California, Oregon, Nevada, and Connecticut. Beatrice Schultz is not affiliated with the ON Equity Sales Company. You've been listening to College Smart Radio with certified financial planner Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. Join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.